Now for our next discussion, the Next 1000 interview, building a billion-dollar business from the ground up. Please welcome Sara Blakely, founder and executive chairwoman, Spanx, and interviewer Maneet Ahuja, senior editor, Forbes.
Sara, it is such an honor. Thank you so much for joining us for this special conversation for our inaugural Next 1000 Summit in celebration of the most intrepid founders and business owners from every corner of the US. Yours is truly a story of the American dream, from starting Spanx with $5,000 in personal savings and bootstrapping the business to the billion-plus-dollar enterprise sold in over 50 countries that stands today. The name of your brand has become synonymous with what it represents. Shapewear that has the power to make women feel invincible. Many of us know at least a little something about your background, but can you take us back to the beginning of it all? I'll set the scene. It's 1998, you're getting ready for a party when you realize you didn't have the right undergarment.
Hi, Money. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to talk to, fellow entrepreneurs. Listen, the soundbite in the media for 20 years has been Sara cut the feet out of her pantyhose because she couldn't figure out what to wear to a party. And while that's true, I want to give you a little bit of the backstory of that. So I grew up on a beach in Florida, Clearwater Beach. And I'd never taken a business class in my life. I'd never worked in fashion or retail. I actually wanted to be a lawyer, and I'm a really bad test taker. So I bombed the LSAT, not once, but twice. And I was not able to really get into a law school. So I ended up, which most people would do if you bombed the LSAT and dashed your dreams of being a lawyer. I drove to Disney World and I tried out to be goofy. And you have to be 5'8", Money, to be goofy. Who knew? I'm only 5'6". I was the perfect height of a chipmunk. So I worked at Disney World for a few months, and then I ended up selling fax machines door to door in Clearwater, Florida for 7 years. So wow. I got a lot of business cards ripped up in my face. I did a lot of being escorted out of buildings. And one day I pulled off the side of the road, Money, and I had had a really tough day. I was crying. And I just remember thinking, I'm in the wrong movie. Like, call the director, call the producer, cut. This is not my life. And I went to my apartment and I wrote down a goal. And I said, I know that I like to sell. I like offering something to someone that they didn't already have or might help their life. And so once I identified that, I wrote down, I want to invent a product that I can sell to millions of people that will make them feel good. And I didn't know what it was going to be. I just knew I set that intention. I looked up in the sky and I said to the universe, you have to give me this idea and I will not squander it. And 2 years later, I'm still selling fax machines. I'm still, doing what I had been doing. But I cut the feet out of control top pantyhose one night to go to a party and wear them under cream pants because everything showed. Mm-hmm. And I thought this might be my idea. And because I had set that intention 2 years prior, I was constantly searching for what my idea was going to be. So I actually only cut the feet out of my control top pantyhose one time. Wow. When I created the company. And that set me on the path to try to create, I was a frustrated consumer, which a lot of inventions just come from frustrated consumers. And what I ended up creating worked better for me in my closet than anything else I could find in the store.
That's incredible. So it really shows the power of mindset. And on that point, we were just talking about mindset. Where do you feel like that came from you, and how has it helped you? I mean, we see where you are today, but if, you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So mindset is really a big part of my journey. And I say this all the time, and I truly believe it, but mindset is the single greatest asset that an entrepreneur has. And it's something we have to work on daily. We literally have to make it part of our daily routine. There's so much negative stimuli happening, and so just like you go to a chiropractor, if your back gets out of alignment, or we go to the gym and we work on our physical, what are we doing daily to work on our mental? Like, how are we getting positive mindset? How are we working on that? Because being an entrepreneur is nothing but navigating obstacles daily. It's just a, constant, like, putting out fires and figuring out this is the end. No, it's not the end. I'm going to make it lemon into lemonade. But I would say, Maneet, this started for me really early when I was 16 years old. I had gone through a series of tragedies in high school, and they were really heartbreaking for me. And around that same time, my dad and mom got separated. And my dad came into my bedroom and he said, "Sweetie, I wish I was your age when I discovered this instead of the age of 40. And he handed me a cassette tape series of 10 tapes. And it was by Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's a motivational, inspirational speaker. And it said how to be a no limit person. And Maneet, I had never heard of this, thought of it, but I was so broken and sad and not in a good place that, I always say there's a hidden blessing in every situation in our life and all the dark times. My hidden blessing was I was so down and desperate. I was willing to listen to these cassette tapes of a middle-aged bald man with a bushy mustache, which most 16-year-old girls would have chucked that in the bottom of their closet. I put the tapes in and I started crying, and I thought to myself, I have spent 16 years in school being taught what to think, but no one has ever taught me how to think. And the light bulb went off for me that I am in control of how I think. I can process things in a way that either propels me forward or holds me back. And I became a lifelong student that day of mindset. And Wayne Dyer back then taught me about law of attraction, manifesting what you want, visualization, which have all been tools that I use to take on $1 billion industry with an endless ad budget with my $5 grand. And I really think that's part of my secret weapon. And you know what's funny, Maneet? I went to Clearwater High, and in high school, nobody ever wanted to be trapped in my car after a party because they're like, she's going to make you listen to that crap. I always had the cassette tapes going. But then fast forward all those years, I ended up on the cover of Forbes, and all my friends from Clearwater High, they texted me and all they wrote was, "Damn, should have listened to that shit."
Oh my God, that's great. I actually just started listening to Wayne Dyer because my massage therapist was speaking his praises, and I'd heard his name, but I actually was listening to it, and it really, it has to come at you at the right moment in your life, as you mentioned, right, to where you're receptive to it. And I was in a similar spot, so that's so interesting to hear. Even for you, it was this David and Goliath situation where you took on a huge industry, right? The odds couldn't have been more stacked against you, but it really was a tool that, we all have, and that's the power of harnessing our mindset. And so, as you said, when you started Spanx, you never worked in retail or fashion before. Did that have any effect on your confidence? I mean, I think, we're following a trail here with this mindset discussion.
Absolutely it did. But because I've been working on mindset since I was 16, it didn't shake my confidence. I had this belief, and I've been listening to conversations and reading books about trust your inner knowing. We all have an inner knowing. And so I think because I've been doing that work, I was willing to take the leap knowing nothing. And what I tell people now is, what you don't know will be your greatest asset if you let it, because it means you don't know how it's supposed to be done. And when you don't know how it's supposed to be done, there's the innovation, there's the magic. We're all on autopilot in life. We're doing things exactly the way someone showed us how to do it. We either were taught it in school, we saw someone else do it. They were like, "Here, good morning. This is how you brush your teeth. This is how you eat your breakfast. This is how would we be doing all that stuff if no one showed us?" And that's literally how I went through the Spanx journey. And, the confidence piece is really big, because to stand in a room full of experts and be the girl with no experience whatsoever and be willing to have the confidence to keep pushing back. And you got to push back in a really strategic way, because when I'm starting out, I had no money, no contacts. I'm standing in the manufacturing floor saying, why is it done that way? Like, why are you guys putting a rubber cord inside of all of our waistbands? And they'd say, well, that's because that's what keeps it up. And I'd say, well, right, but we've made a lot of advancements in yarn with Lycra. Is there a chance we took the rubber cord out? Would it still stay up? And just asking questions like that. And they go, no, it won't stay up. And I'd say, well, have we tried it? Has anybody tried this recently? And then I would just press them on it. And so Spanx created products that were giving women tremendous like comfort and results, and was a game changer in women's closets around the world. And that was all just from someone with no previous experience being willing to stand in a room with experts and challenge the way it was done.
Yeah, and I think I remember from an earlier interview I read with you from years ago, or maybe it was an interview we did together, but I think the shock that you said individuals felt when you when they said, how did you get into Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom, these huge big box retailers with zero industry contacts? And I think you had said, well, you just picked up the phone and called, and their jaws dropped open, right? And that was also, to your point, you didn't know any better because you hadn't been in the industry, but you had that confidence. And speaking of confidence, when I go on stage for any speaking event, I love to wear your moto leggings. They give me the confidence. And so yeah, I mean, now you're paying it forward with that too. So in the beginning, you really mastered the art of sharing your story, which you do so beautifully, and sharing the why behind the product, particularly as you had to pitch so many men. Now that Spanx has become successful for so long, over 20 years, do those early years still inform how you lead your business today?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's critical for you to share the why behind what you're doing. You know, people are really focused on the what, but consumers get very connected to the why. And so from the very beginning, I was like, here's my product, but let me tell you why I did it. And I kept staying very focused on the why. I always say, you know, sell the problem you're solving, not the product. People are far more emotional about that. And my why also was about women, you know, like I feel very strongly that I was given this opportunity. I was born in the right place at the right time. I had nothing to do with those two things. I saw my mom and my grandmother's lack of options, and a lot of women still around the world today that don't have the option to fulfill their potential. And so that was a real strong why for me, was to make the most and to push myself as hard as I could in areas that scared me on behalf of the women that don't have that chance. And also, Monique, when I stood on the floor 21 years ago in the manufacturing plant, I looked to my right and I looked to my left, and there was not a woman in the room. And I thought, I'm going to advocate for women through product. Like somebody needs to be standing in this room going, but we're really uncomfortable, you know, or it's digging, like I can't breathe, like it's not working, or it's leaving a big bulge on my thigh under my full slacks. So that became a passion for me, and staying connected to the why. People hear that, they're so much more invested than if they just hear, well, here's my product. It's a footless pantyhose. You can wear it with open-toed shoes and not have a panty line. You know, that's important to kind of get it, but without telling them the why, you're missing a huge piece.
Right, especially people that aren't directly, maybe people that you're selling to, like perhaps men, like you said, but aren't having that firsthand frustration or experience too, you know? Right. So you talk a lot about the importance of fearing failure and making mistakes. And why do you think that that's so crucial to be successful? We all face tons of failure, and you know, it dissuades a lot of founders and entrepreneurs from picking themselves back up. I would say a tremendous amount. Why is it so critical to the path to success?
So, you know, I think the greatest fear is fear of failure for human beings. And when I sit and think about that, I'm like, what is it about the fear of failure? I also think it's connected to the fear of being embarrassed. Those things. And that really comes down to caring a lot about what other people think about you. And that's something I've been working on with mindset since I was 16. I'm a work in progress, but if there's anything I can recommend you guys work on, is that, like, really freeing yourself up from what other people think. So I will intentionally embarrass myself. I mean, if like a month goes by and I haven't done something embarrassing, I'm like, oh, I got to go embarrass myself, because I found that when I do that, it loses its power. And what I realize is when you make a mistake, or you have a failure, or you have an embarrassing moment, if you allow it to become a great story, you've got a great asset, because that's like a really wonderful way to connect with other human beings, other customers, is through that vulnerability that we share with each other. So I kind of see oops and failures as like gifts, like a gem, like, oh, good. Thank you for that. I'm going to use it and make someone else feel really good or not as alone, or I'll be able to connect in a way. And growing up, my dad taught my brother and me to fail. He encouraged us to fail. I would sit at the dinner table and my dad would say, Sarah, what have you failed at this week?
I remember that story. Yeah. And you do really put your money where your mouth is, where the embarrassing situations are concerned. Because you also had done stand-up comedy for a little bit, right? To kind of.
I did, which is absolutely terrifying. I mean, that is so terrifying. But, I used a lot of what I learned in stand-up comedy in my marketing. I think making somebody laugh or smile is so powerful. And I used humor as a secret weapon up against the billion-dollar companies for sure. And the best way, when people say, well, I'm not funny, it's like, well, be vulnerable, like, show your humanness. Like, humanness is going to connect you to people and make other people laugh and feel good more than anything, more than telling like the best joke, But my dad encouraged us to fail, and that was huge because he reframed my definition of failure. It didn't become about the outcome. It became about not trying. And I would come home and say, Dad, I failed at this. And he would high five me. And
wow. That wasn't my experience growing up.
Right. And so a lot of us are also afraid to fail because like, we don't want to disappoint parents. We don't want to disappoint, other loved ones. So that was very freeing that he did that for my brother and me.
You've always been very passionate about infusing your brand with playfulness and humor. And one of Spanx's taglines is making the world a better place, one butt at a time. How can people, especially women, use humor in business and sales to their advantage?
I would just say by being vulnerable, like also just being, I believe when I started Spanx 21 years ago, I was like, everybody's so serious in business. Why is everything so serious? Do we have to act this serious? And so I remember thinking, I don't want to have to act serious to be taken seriously, And so I use playfulness. I'm silly. I'm just, willing to laugh at myself. At Spanx, back to the failure, we have things called oops meetings where we celebrate our oops, and I'll stand up in front of the company and tell them what I messed up at. Other people in the company are invited to share their oops. A lot of times we put theme songs with them. So we'll look
That's
up.
hilarious.
They're hilarious. Like one of the things, so I made a whole list of the songs that went with it and presented one day all the things that we had not been doing right throughout the history of the company. But as far as being silly and playful, I in the marketing, I was like, I just want to talk to the consumer the way I would talk to my friends at dinner. And I felt 21 years ago, it was very different. I mean, everybody was, I felt like the industry in all industries acted like, if I don't act serious and act like the expert, you might not think I'm credible enough. And then therefore you won't buy my product. Well, I showed up and I'm like, I laminated a picture of my own butt in pants from Kinko's, and I'm standing at Neiman Marcus with like the fanciest women ever. And I'm holding this Kinko's laminated copy of my rear end. And I'm like, look what this can do for you. So, I mean, I just took a very different approach and I think it worked. I mean, Spanx never advertised for 16 years and we became a global household name. Right. And that's incredible with no advertising. And I think it's just because women felt so connected to it and shared it with other women.
I mean, I have to admit though, the packaging though was very appealing because I think I was like, in my teens when it came out, and previous to that, my mom would always talk about like a girdle or shapewear, and I'd be like, that's for grandmas. But then the red packaging with the cute girl and the butt reference on the front and her high heels just made it seem like a cool it product. And speaking more on like scalability, transitioning a little bit, the brand and product that you created was totally new, right? It was a industry category creator, a need that had gone unaddressed for over the last 20 years. We've seen Spanx create this whole new category, as I said. What advice do you have for people who get frustrated with competition or copycat brands? How have you personally approached this?
Well, I mean, I've had people copy me for the last 20 years, and my advice is I don't pay much attention to the competition at all. I mean, I'm an innovator, and I've told the company, I wake up every day and there's innovators and there's imitators, and I'd far rather be an innovator. It's harder, it requires more work, but it's so much more rewarding. So the only time I would ever pay attention to the competition is through innovation. If I'm innovating, if the team and I have a new idea for women, we would want to know, hey, does this already exist? We thought of this, but so I would check that market for that. You can also be checking the market for weaknesses, like I'm a consumer and what's not working about what's out there. And that's a really fun place to try to create product and services. But I have not focused on the competition. I find that when you start to really pay attention to the competition, that's when things are they're probably going to start heading south for you as a company. Like those are little indicators. In 21 years, we've had moments where the team started getting a little too preoccupied with that. And I'm like, this is a flag. What is this telling us about ourselves?
Right. That's a good insight.
I've had competition serve me really well. I had big companies knock me off very early on, and they spent $8 to $20 million on ad budgets that gave awareness for the product that I had just created. And my product was superior, so it ended up benefiting me.
Working to your advantage. So I know we're just about a time, but I have two last quick important questions. So sure. Especially pursuant to this audience. So giving back has been such an important part of your business from the beginning. You've also been a huge supporter of small businesses, many of whom are in the audience today. Can you tell us a little bit more about your philanthropic work and your most recent efforts with the Bread Backpack Fund?
Sure. I mean, during the pandemic, I saw that women were being disproportionately impacted, very much so. And so I ended up donating. Yeah, I know. It's just unbelievable. So I ended up donating $5 million. I gave 5,000 different entrepreneurs. I gave 1,000 different entrepreneurs $5,000 each, which is what I started Spanx with. And I just did that to try to help get them through this difficult time, bridge a gap. They were small startup businesses, but they made a difference. And I'm just so proud of that and happy for that. And that's the Red Backpack Fund. I named it that because I started Spanx with my lucky red backpack from college, which now hangs framed in a clear box at the Spanx headquarters, but it really is lucky. I'm telling you, it is. So I gave each woman with the money her own lucky red backpack as well. But, I just want to say, Monique, there's 50% of small business entrepreneurs are women, and only 2.3% of VC funding is going to women. So right. There is a tremendous gap there. And I'm happy to do my part and what I can to try to fund a lot of those women out there that are starting out and trying to make a difference.
That's awesome. That's incredible. And the way that you pay it forward and your give back nature, we're going to get right back to that. But one quick important last question was on, this is a full circle moment for you, having sold a majority stake of your business to Blackstone. Why now? And what made you land on Blackstone as the right custodian to take Spanx into the future?
I am someone who operates off of gut and intuition, and people have been asking me for 21 years, when am I going to sell? Who would I sell to? And I just always knew I would know. And the time is now. It's the right time for the business. We've pivoted into activewear, apparel, swim, and the business is doing phenomenal. And to have a partner like Blackstone with global resources is just the right time for the business. And it's the right time for me personally. So, I still own a significant stake in the business, and I'm still going to play a role in product, which is my favorite part of the business. And super excited about the future for the brand and also new beginnings.
And on a final note, we all saw the incredible news on social media that you gifted all of Spanx employees 2 first-class tickets anywhere in the world plus $10,000. I'm the first to admit I was pretty jealous. What made you decide to do that?
I spent a lot of time as I knew the deal was getting nearer. It became a real focus for me on how can I include the employees in this. And it just felt like I wanted them to have an experience. My motto in life is the more you experience in life, the more you have to offer others. Mm-hmm. And I knew that, a lot of times people aren't willing, or they don't spend money on themselves. Like if they just receive money, it ends up not being spent on themselves. So I thought if I give them 2 first-class tickets and the money for the trip, they're going to go create a memory for themselves to celebrate this big milestone in the brand's history. And that's how I landed on that. And it was really exciting and fun. And I was thrilled to be able to do it. I had no idea the video was going to go so viral. I probably would have worn more than a white t-shirt, but anyway.
And in corporations all across the world, I think, I know definitely with me and my Forbes colleagues, we were like, where would we go if we had that experience?
Yeah. Well, I was happy to be able to do it, so it's great.
Well, I think you have a little something you wanted to share with our audience here today as well before we say goodbye, right?
I do, Manit. It's not 2 first-class tickets to anywhere in the world. I'm sorry about that. But it is really good. It is really good. So 2 things. One is, if you're not following me on Instagram and you want to, I'm at Sara Blakely. And if you just put #Forbes in my latest post in a comment, I'm going to pick several of you and send you my masterclass for free. And that's got all kinds of insights about my journey.
Wow.
And then the other thing is, if you go to Spanx.com for the next 24 hours, and when you check out, you just type in the word Forbes, we're going to knock 20% off everything that you're getting. And that's something Spanx only does once a year during Black Friday. We never do that. We have so many amazing products, and a lot of them are probably going to be gone by Black Friday. So this is like a little preview for you guys to go grab what you want and get 20% off everything.
Well, that's so generous and incredible, Sara. Thank you so much for joining us and inspiring our next 1,000 audience of entrepreneurs.